and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to The Future is Female. This is the show where we find the extraordinary in every woman. Now, I'm coming to you today from this year's Vigo X event in Kent TTDI, at which my guest today will be speaking about deepfake abuse and the global fight for justice. I'm delighted to introduce her. Noelle Martin is an activist, a law reformist advocating against image-based sexual abuse and fighting for digital privacy and consent. Noelle, welcome to the show. It's good of you to join me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so maybe we can get to know you a little bit first. Tell our audience today a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you became so passionate about advocating against image-based abuse.
Yes, so thank you for having me. My name is Noelle Martin. I'm an activist and a researcher, and my entry into this world of image-based sexual abuse and deepfake abuse started when I was targeted by this. And it's been over a decade of lived experience of anonymous perpetrators online taking images of me and doctoring them into fake, intimate content, images, and then videos, and posting that online and really just targeting me relentlessly for years and years and years. And I've done what I can to speak out about it and to fight for justice in terms of helping change the laws in Australia. And now I use my voice to speak out about this because it's a global issue. And it is something that is becoming an urgent, prolific issue.
Okay. All right, so maybe you can start there. Give us a sense of how prevalent this issue is. I'm sure a lot of people watching may be of a different generation, this may not be part of their everyday life, but from your research, how prevalent is the issue of image-based sexual abuse?
Well, studies and reports are showing that since 2017, the biggest deepfake abuse sites, the 40 biggest deepfake abuse sites, have amassed billions of views since 2017. One report has shown that there was a 550% increase in the creation of deepfake abuse videos. And we're also seeing the rise of nudify apps. So essentially these apps that allow anyone to upload an image of a clothed woman, and it will churn out a nude image of that woman without her consent. And everyday women are actually the ones that are disproportionately affected by these nudify apps. And that's what we know. I think that this issue is a lot bigger because at least from the individual level, people might not know it's happening to them. And it might take a while before they ever discover.
Wow. Yeah, so what was your journey like? How did you discover that this was happening to you, that you were being targeted?
Well, I had the experience of people targeting me before I ever found out. So from what I understand, I was 17 when they started targeting me.
You were a minor?
Yes, yeah. And I was 18 when I found out. But when I think about the whole experience now, and I'm 30 now, I think that by the time I found out, it was already too late. That was my journey of life set for me because of what they were doing and how this impacts your identity, your likeness, your ability to exercise agency, autonomy, self-determine, your ability to gain employment, your ability to navigate the world was almost already set for me.
Wow.
And, but I've done everything that I can to reclaim my name and who I am. But I worry about young women and girls around the world who are going to have to deal with this because it's happening.
Okay, so many layers. I hadn't considered the multifaceted layers of impact. Let's talk about that. Walk us through what this does to a woman, let alone a girl, a child. So you mentioned so many layers of impact, and often we think, oh, psychological impact, mental health impact, but what would be other ways that this had impacted your life and other survivors?
Yeah, so this is something that people, I think, misunderstand because it happens online. So I think people underestimate the harms of this to a person in real life.
Because it spills over to real life.
It spills over to in real life, and it is, but like people have described that it's akin to the feelings that you get if you are sexually abused in real life. The mental distress and the violation that comes with seeing yourself in these positions, and then it's often accompanied with a written text. So people comment underneath and people talk about you, and they can post identifiable information about you. So it's not just the images that you see, it's the commentary behind it, and the commentary is very graphic. So you have to go through the violation of that. But then you go through life, and some of the harms manifest over time. So if things are on the internet and can be accessible or discoverable through Google, employers can see that.
Yeah.
Family members can see that. Interpersonal relations can see that. Romantic relationships, could be impacted by that. So that's one layer, and then every job you might go for, this is something that could come up. And then you've got the difficulty with taking things down, and that's a whole nother battle.
Okay, let's talk about that battle.
Yeah.
So you fought the Australian criminal justice system to get justice. What was that? So talk me through the effort to get the law reform.
So I can't take credit. I can't take it. No, I can't.
I understand.
But I did what I could to fight for justice, and essentially what we have in Australia and in most of the states and territories and at the national level is that we've criminalised this conduct.
Was it not the case before?
No, it was specifically criminalised before. And the power of criminalising it is that you name it. You also educate people and you potentially deter people. But as we know, countries are limited in what they can do because someone halfway around the world can appropriate you and post it online, target you, potentially even if you don't have a social media. Like they can try and get maybe a LinkedIn photo, and they can take that, doctor it, potentially ruin your life, and they are sitting halfway around the world, and the justice system, the legal system that you might be in, can't really touch them.
Okay, help me understand the scale of this. So this is not people who know you in real life targeting you for revenge porn or non-consensual intimate images. This is strangers across the world, across the internet, taking images and manipulating them, exploiting them?
Well, there's no one experience that is like a universal experience. It differs from person to person. There are a range of motivations to commit this from perpetrators, and it's not just motivated by revenge. You don't have to know who the person is. It does happen, in family domestic violence contexts, and that's a situation where you would know who the perpetrator is potentially, but there are a range of motivations such as to exert power and control because you can, because it's possible, for social status, for monetary gain, for sexual gratification. There's a range of motivations, and it can be from people that you don't know halfway around the world.
And you said that sometimes the jurisdiction cannot do anything to prosecute them. The law doesn't even touch them. What about the digital platforms, the Googles and the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the TikToks of the world? What role do they play, and what role have they played before?
Well, all of the major social media platforms they claim to prohibit this kind of abuse. They claim to prohibit it. But as we know, this does take place. And it's facilitated by these platforms, but it's also facilitated on sketchy websites that exist on the internet. But research has shown that these kind of deepfake abuse sites are being advertised or promoted on social media sites where there's referral links that are available and people can access them, and then they'll be referred to these deepfake abuse providers. And so that's happening through social media. And this has been an issue it's not new, it's been happening for a long time. And, in my view, the social media platforms that have facilitated this in any way are part of the deepfake abuse pipeline, and they should be held accountable. They should not be allowing this, and they should not be profiting from it in any way. And Google in particular is a very significant player in the deepfake abuse pipeline. To this day, when you Google deepfake porn, the Mr. Deepfakes, the world's biggest deepfake abuse site, is the first search result. So Google directs traffic to these sites. Google is not an innocent bystander. And, the sad thing is that it's individual women and girls who have to face the consequences of their inaction.
Have you had a chance to engage with the folks from Google with your advocacy? What has been their rationale, the justification for not taking sterner action?
Well, all of them are public relations machines. So they can claim all they want publicly about what they do and what they don't do. And that's a typical situation that we get and we hear in any kind of discussions about this issue. The big tech companies, the social media companies will say, this is X, Y, Z, what we do. But a simple search on Google, you can discover what they actually are up to. And there's things that we don't know about what's happening. And all we can go on is the fact that they haven't acted, and it still happens on their platforms. So to me, it doesn't really matter what they say. It matters what they do, and they haven't done what they need to do.
Well, you said the last 10 years going around fighting, talking about this issue, bringing attention and awareness to it. When you speak to young people, particularly, who live so much of their lives online, what do you tell them about what to be aware and how they live their lives? I mean, what scares you about the way we live our lives today?
Well, this is a very interesting conversation because I hold a very strong view about how people should interact with the digital world given that these are threats. I mean, I hold a view that social media, the digital world, is a cultural part of our world now. It is a place where people can make money, can build a profile, build a brand, engage in the world politically, and women and young girls and anyone should be able to fully participate in the cultural aspects of life without being targeted, without fear being targeted. They should be able to wear what makes them happy, express themselves how they want, and it shouldn't be something that they have to change because these perpetrators are existing and the system allows it to happen. So I am hesitant when I talk to young people because I don't want them to have to change their behaviour.
So what does need to change?
What needs to change is the systems of justice, the legal systems, the regulatory systems need to be stronger. And they need to be enforced as well. So it's not just enough for countries around the world to introduce laws to deal with this. They actually need to be enforced by the courts. Law enforcement need to take it seriously. Digital platforms need to take it seriously. So, look, there's so much that needs to be done, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done.
Okay, so you see this as rather than women and young girls limiting themselves, worried about living their lives fully online. We need to stop the threat from happening. When you think about, you said a bit earlier that this disproportionately affects women and girls. Is the system set up to recognize that? Is there a gender-sensitive approach to the laws that are being enacted? I mean, I'm sure this happens to men as well, but it disproportionately affects women. Are the laws gender-sensitive? Are the is the enforcement gender-sensitive? Is the support for survivors gender-sensitive?
Well, my understanding is no. No, it's not gender sensitive. So yeah, that's something that...
How would you like to see support for survivors be improved? Because I'm sure that, it's one thing to say, well, let's look at the problem, but there are already people living through this. And you said you've been doing this for 10 years?
Well, I mean, I've had the experience and I've been publicly advocating a little bit less than that, but the whole experience over 10 years.
Can I ask you, sometimes victims or survivors can get re-traumatized when they are advocating for an issue that they feel so passionate about, that they have had to live through. Is that something you've had to struggle with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is hard. You have to talk about it again and again.
Yeah. And I try to talk about this like from my heart and my chest every time. So it's easier. It's easier over time, but it's exhausting. Like you just like, you know what I mean? But like it has to be done, and there's not many people that are actually talking about this, because to speak out about this risks further exposure to the very thing that you don't want people to see. So there aren't many people at all in the world who have had a lived experience that are talking about it. So it's a huge burden and a huge weight to carry, and especially when you're dealing with the horrible comments, because you're talking about something so graphic, and then the comments are like very personal, always about your appearance, how you talk, this and that. It's always horrible for women. I'm sure you know about what it's like for women online. So, but look, you just have to deal with it.
Have you had instances where someone has said, "Thank you, Noelle, for sharing that, because it's happened to me, and now that's given me courage to speak up as well"?
Yeah, I mean, victims do have reached out, and like that's what's important to me, and it does help me a lot. But I think it's also a little bit hopeful too when I see, as much as there might be backlash, there has been a shift, and that gives me hope. There's been a shift even in the last like 5-6 years, where when I first spoke out, it was like horrible backlash of victim blaming. Now I think that people are much more, at least in certain parts of the world, they're a lot more aware that these kinds of online abuses have serious consequences, and so that's a little bit hopeful that there's some shift there. Okay,
so let's talk about what men can do, because this isn't just a women's issue. Just because it disproportionately affects women doesn't mean that men can absolve themselves from responsibility. What would you like to see men do to address this?
Well, I think the men that are accessing these sites, that are viewing this content, that are creating it, know that the people that you're impacting, can potentially lose their lives over this. And I wished that more men would speak out about the horrible ways that women are treated, whether it's about this issue or just in general, sexist, misogynistic comments, that when you hear it, you say something and you're like, that's not acceptable, because nothing is ever going to change for women and girls if like rape culture and misogynistic commentary is allowed to flourish. So I would hope that, and I know there are a lot of decent men. I would just hope that there's more
Yeah, more allies, more
Yes.
people willing to speak up. Can I ask you what this experience has taught you about consent in the digital age? Sometimes I think about that a lot when we're viewing a video that is emotive for us on social media. I think about, well, was there consent attached to this person being filmed and that we're viewing for our entertainment? What do you think about that, Noelle?
Yeah, I think that's a really important discussion because we see so much of content. I think we're in a content creation
Yeah,
world.
we're saturated with it, right?
Saturated,
Yeah.
where people will walk down the street and potentially film someone doing something that, even if it's in public, it's like you haven't gotten consent. And that small clip can, if it's decontextualized, if it's taken out of context, it can destroy lives if it's appropriated, or even if it's just depicting someone in that minuscule period of time. Like, you don't have consent to take a video or an image of someone and then post it and comment about it.
Yeah.
So I just hope that we move to a society where people have more control over their name, their image, their likeness, their voice, their like identity, because there's so much that can go wrong.
You're thinking about the scale of it,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it hits you, the scale of what could go wrong. In the minutes that we have left, I do want to ask you, so we're here at the Zurvigo X event, and the event is really about empowering women to explore the world safely and fully. What advice would you give for women to navigate these threats? We talked about the threats that are there, but how do we do that confidently without the fear of image-based sexual abuse?
Look, I think I would say to women, live your life, be yourself, express yourself, navigate the world. You know, and even if this happens, you're not alone. You know, there's no shame in if this happens to you, and that it doesn't have to define you. So go out and experience the world and yeah.
And live.
And live.
Just be and exist. And with events like this, where we have a gathering of people who want to share their experiences and, you know, try to make the world a little bit better, offer solutions, how important do you think that is, that we come together, that there is this solidarity, that you said that you're not alone, that there are people out there who have lived it and who can empathize? How important do you think forums like Zurvigo X is? You're here today.
Yes, amazing. And I think it's so important to be in community. I think that's such an element of this whole journey and like life that I've learned how important it is, because you need people. You can't, like, adults need villages too. Adults really need villages, and we need to be there for each other, because everyone's going through a horrible, or like they could be going through troubles and struggles that we don't know about. And I think that people need each other to like make it through sometimes the day. So being in community with amazing women, and it's just so important.
No, thank you. Deeply thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not easy to talk about, and every time someone asks you about it, you have to relive it. But thank you. Your voice really matters to people listening today. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have for you on this episode of The Future is Female. I'm Melissa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.